So tonight we'll be sharing some personal stories. But I think before we do that, I do want to use the opportunity to introduce a little bit my values. And I'd love to sort of use the opportunity to sort of introduce my why. You know, why do I do coffee? And I think we all here tonight because we love coffee, right? Not because you like, you know, Sash. But as we start talking and discussing deeper, we'll understand that we like coffee for a little bit different reason, which I think is great. You know, there's a lot of, you know, we all individuals, and more we can keep digging deeper in ourselves, more we can find these answers. You know, why do we like coffee? And I think it's really important sort of thing to know what's driving us in a coffee. And so I want to use a little bit of opportunity to sort of go back 5, 6, 7 years ago, maybe 10. A lot of hair, maybe 12. And because in this place, this is where I discovered my why. Really, I can probably now explain in one sentence, this is why I like coffee, which makes it simple. And sometimes when I talk to some of my friends and coffee professionals, and when I ask a question, hey, why do you like coffee? They're continuously talking for 40, 50 minutes, which is great. It's very exciting, but I think it can also be confusing if you don't really know our values. And I think if you know our values, why do we do coffee, then it's so much easier to enjoy it. And it's so much easier to connect yourself with the people that are sharing similar values. And so much easier to see opportunities. You know, this is a great opportunity for me because I can connect with it, or this is actually not good, so I'm not really interested to talk about. So this photo for me is very exciting. It's very emotional, and it's at the same time disappointing. Disappointing is when I see myself and my hair. So much hair back then. I'm getting old, so. But it's exciting because future for this place in India has been great, and has been looking really good. The first time I visited this farm. That was back in 2011, and this man here, Mr. Krishna, he managed to taste his coffee for the very first time. So he was managing this farm for over 40 years. This farm is Talana Estate. What's the blend we use here? Great. So it's about 40% of the blend that we actually use in this coffee in a Hitman. And but for 40 years, these guys used to sell their coffee to sea market, commodity prices. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. So when we went there for the first time, I enjoyed the coffee, and we bought a lot of coffee with the sea market prices. This is great. It's nice and cheap. It's so much better than what I used to buy. Then I went to Australia and I saw, people in Australia are really enjoying this coffee. This blend, it's been growing. I think it's probably the most popular blend we have these days. And I felt a little bit bad. For me, that kind of did not really work with my ethics well, because we could, us small on a team back then, we could have a good life, have enough money to take kids to school, to have a car, to have meals, and definitely progressing with this coffee business. But then thinking of them and how they live, moms or parents that actually pick the coffee, they had their little kids picking the coffee. Sometimes they would put a kid next to the tree. In India, coffee is grown in very deep canopy, deep shade. This particular farm is actually next door neighbor to the National Wild Park. So the kid would be there in the wild, taken by different animals, herd by different animals, and getting paid very $3.50 per day for them to pick coffees. And so we said, this is not what I want to support, and that's not how I want to support this. So when I came back, I said to my team, hey, we need to change something. And this And we need to do projects for people. We need to do project that we can possibly build a childcare center for them. So, and we can sponsor the childcare center, and then they can put the kids in the childcare center while they're picking the coffees. Or maybe we also sponsor that we build the electric fencing around, which we did. And then, later on we have built a sanitary system. So now they have toilets and hot water. But then we said, how about we also actually have kids to be able to go to school. So, they are considered as a part of society. So we have a bus that we've organized that takes them to school and then takes them back. So, maybe future generations, at least they have a chance to do something else if they don't want to be stuck on a farm. So all of these projects started coming up, and we said, well, why don't we form another company that we call Project Origin, as some of you have heard it. So the Project Origin was founded, after this visit and after this day with a pure idea to, we want to grow and we want to make awesome business, but we actually want to make sure that they grow with us as well. And we leave, this place and next generations in a lot better place than what we found them. So that's my why, and that's my motivation why I love coffee. I want to serve as amazing coffee to customers, but throughout that entire level, I want to make sure that we make a difference in this part of the world. And of course, we need to employ great people and great coffee brewers and ambassadors and roasters, because it needs to be communicated all the way. But my really true and honest why is it's them. Not often, maybe I don't talk about it as much, but that's what's been driving me, and that's really, for me personally, that's beneath the surface. A lot of people see what's on the top. Maybe people can say, yeah, Sash competed in WBC, and maybe he came up with the OCD, or he made a carbonic maceration, but that's all above the surface. Like the really big why is this. I think a lot of us had that moment, wow moment. My moment was when I tasted, I remember it, Ethiopian Biloya from Mecca Coffee Roasters. And I went to the shop in Sydney in King Street, and I've ordered espresso, and God, it smelled like blueberries. So I'm looking like, did they put something here? Like, the coffee can't be like that. And when I've tasted it, I've completely changed what I think of the taste and what coffee can taste like. I wanted to have more of that coffee. Following day, they said, we don't have any more, but then we have in a cafe in Melbourne. He works for Axel now. God, I forgot his name. It used to be called cafe called here in Melbourne Wild Goat. Anyway, they told me they have a same coffee in Melbourne here, so I actually took a flight from Canberra to Melbourne, visited a coffee shop, had a few espressos, said, wow, it can taste like that. 2 years later, I visited Ethiopian Biloya to actually see what it looks like. So, but I think that's one part of and it took me a while to actually understand what's really driving me every morning. And what I've shared earlier with that Indian story, that's what's been driving me. And I think it's okay if some of you don't have that exact answer, what is it that you love about coffee? Sometimes it's taste and it starts like that, sometimes it's latte art. I was always really bad in latte art, so it's not me definitely. But maybe if I can suggest, because when I do some barista coaching, and also internal leadership within a company, I ask people to write down, why do you like coffee? So maybe some of you can just write down as many pages as you possibly can, and then sit on it for a week. After 1 week, read it. When you read it, you can say, this was bad. Maybe you had too many of these beers, so you probably don't agree with it, but there will be some things that as you keep digging deeper and deeper, you're going to be attached to. And because these things are actually probably your true value. Why do you enjoy coffee so much? And once you know the answers, and then when you start connecting yourself with different people or different coffees or different professionals, you'll actually be able to it's like a magnet. You'll just so much easier to be able to scan and say, hey, I actually want to be part of this or part of that. And you can choose the doors that suit you, and the doors that don't suit you, you can not bother coming in and wasting your time because it's not out of your interest. So I hope that makes sense. If you do this, that you actually write something down and you find something really good, please send me a text. I'd love to know if it works. It did work for many people that I'm connected with, and I hope, it's a tip that you can take. But in saying that, I want to show you now that we understand a little bit of my values. I want to share how that philosophy really has helped me to do some of the, I believe, unbelievable things for me and also for the community I'm connected with. So this is the picture of the farm from Honduras. So I was in Honduras on my very first Cup of Excellence back in 2012. And I spent a week learning about farming, about coffee, about taste. And then also decided to go and buy some coffees for us, for Honor Coffee. And I always have a problem by actually purchasing set amount of coffee that I was told that we need, because I'm usually a bit emotional. So when I taste something that I like, I just buy it regardless, we need it or not. So instead of buying one container of coffee, I bought two. I didn't need to. Anyway, I'm there on the phone arguing with my wife. I said, it's good, we'll sell it somehow, it will be fine, don't worry. It tastes great, so it's fine. Don't worry, we'll pay for it. And then on the very last day, some of the producers asked me, Sash, can you please do us a favor? We want to set up the table for you. Can you cup 10 coffees? These farmers, they've never, no one tasted their coffees, they'd love some feedback. So knowing my values, for me it was easy. Of course, I'll do it. Forget about sightseeing for the morning, I'll go and cup coffees before I fly out. So I'm cupping these 10 coffees, and there was this coffee on the table that was very last one, number 10, and I just smelled it and said, wow, it was unbelievable. I couldn't wait for them to pour the water so I can actually start tasting it. So I went through the first round. I said, I gotta buy this. Even though I bought way too much, I'm gonna be in trouble. I know I just need to buy this coffee. I go for another round, 30 minutes, cupping it. I'm already talking to the guy. I say, can you please connect me with this producer? I'm flying in a few hours, but I need to know who's good this coffee. This coffee is unreal. 40 minutes, 45 minutes, I've scored the coffee 90, 91 points, one of the best coffees, not the best coffee, but for me, you have that moment. I'm sure if you taste the Colombian again, you think, it wasn't that good. But you just have that moment that you think, this is it. So, I'm flying within 2 hours. I'm making such an effort to actually talk to the producer, to tell him, hey, this is unbelievable. And he goes, is it? Okay, I didn't know because I've never grew coffee before. I bought a farm in El Chelito because a lot of Cup of Excellence winners are from there. We just planted some seeds. This is the first harvest, first picking. They're not supposed to be good, but they are good. I said, maybe you should enter Cup of Excellence. And he goes, what's Cup of Excellence? So he doesn't know anything. I said, it's this competition. It can be good for you. I think you can do well. Anyway, he entered the COE. And 2 months later, and I said, I'll buy you, please enter Cup of Excellence, and I'll buy the rest, because I don't want to buy everything from you, because I think this can be good for you. So he did. A few months later, he called me, he goes, Sash, we won. I said, what? And he was so emotional. They won with 92.65 points, which was a record highest points up until this year. I think this year Mark Dundon and his partner from Nicaragua won in Honduras with 94 points. But that, they felt very appreciative, and they said, because of you, we actually won. What can we do to sort of help you and support you? I said, well, I want to come next year. I want to lease part of the farm. I want to do experiment to see how we can make it even better. So I went to the farm to actually understand why that coffee is so good, and I understood. I'm sorry for slides, it's not very clear, but I understood that it's definitely not because they know how to grow great coffee, because they never grew it before. It's this very special microclimate, very special altitude. This is a mountain that's called El Chelito in Honduras, and in last 15 years, 12 Cup of Excellence are from actually this mountain. And the reason it's so special, it's this cloud cover. It's the most wet area in Honduras, and only about 3 to 4 hours during the day there's no clouds, so there's the sun. Everything else, super cloudy. which means that temperatures are very low, and then during the day and night, difference in the temperatures is sort of, during the day maybe 20 degrees, during the night drops to 8, 9, 6, 7 degrees. So the stress on the coffee cherries is extreme, because when we have a temperatures of 16 degrees plus, coffee cherries keep maturing more and more and more. But as soon as we drop the temperatures to below 16 degrees, it stops. So from flowering to ripening, it takes about 9 months to mature. It's very, very slow, giving us really complex coffee. And so, you know, seeing the place, I was really excited. So this is great, you know. And I was asking Jorge, hey, how big is your farm? And he said, it's about 50 hectares. I said, great, you know, we can have a lot of roasting coffees. But he goes, I don't want to plant. I said, why? He said, there's no buyers. And to grow coffee here, it's really hard. It's very steep. They can't dry coffee there because it's very humid during the night. So it's very labor intensive. Like from the moment they pick, they pulp, they have to go to low altitude to dry the coffees. And so we can't grow that much coffee, and we cannot rely on commodity prices. It's not sustainable. So as we were going up the hill and I was looking at this mountain, I said, wow, you know, how about I look at buying 4 or 5 hectares of this farm and do some research. You know, I plant new varietals, because he was saying it takes about 6 years for his varietals from flowering, 4 years from from the seed to the very first picking. And because of these cool conditions, yield is really low as well. So I said, well, how about I buy 5 hectares and I do experiment with varietals. I'll bring varietals from different countries. I'll experiment with the processing, with fermentation, and then we can actually see if I should make a success with one or the other coffee. I can pass on these recipes to you and your neighbors, so we can actually create something nice. So he was, that all happened with that one visit. So as we were climbing on the mountain and then climbing back, I decided to buy a farm. So there's a double problem. Not only that we bought a lot more coffee than what we needed, but I'm on the flight back home to Australia. I'm thinking, all right, now she's gonna get angry. I've named the farm after my wife, Finca Betty, so she does not get angry at me as much. And so I said, hey, I bought a farm. She goes, oh my God, in Honduras. And she was like, her face was just going pale. I said, but I've named it after you. For me, this gave me the opportunity, like following that philosophy and just choosing the doors that really go with my values to become a coffee producer, which back then I became the coffee producer so I can actually work and help and support these people. But I've actually realized that the deeper I went, it's something that I'm really passionate about. And this is the beginning of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of experiments we made. And 4 years later, we came up with a carbonic maceration. But the beginning is here. People see above the surface, but not necessarily what and how and why. And beauty with that is when I competed in 2015, Lanza family, they actually have decided they are 67 years old now. They've never traveled overseas before, but they decided to come to Australia to watch me compete in Australian comp. I did not even use their coffee. I used Colombian. So when I won, the entire family, so grandchildren and children, like all 8 of them, they flew to Seattle to watch compete. And that, these moments, they give you energy to just, go an extra step. And when I fly to Honduras, like even though if I fly 11 or 12 o'clock nighttime, entire family comes to the airport. When I fly to Canberra, I catch Uber. I'm joking. So they've given me a lot of energy to sort of build what I guess we have today with Inona Coffee. But in the same time, I have given them the opportunity as well to enjoy the coffee. And we thought after I won 2015 Seattle, we thought, well, maybe we should do something for this entire community. Now we have a great relationship, but there's so many other producers that are not connected. So I said, why don't we organize an auction, non-profit auction for other producers, where we can bring buyers all over the world. We can use the status that I won WBC and actually use that name to connect. and hopefully we can connect so many other coffee roasters with other coffee producers that still have exceptional coffees. Then I called Habib, a GM. I said, mate, have you ever organized auction before? He goes, no, well, now you need to do it. You have a couple months. So he's done our very first non-profit auction in 2016 for us. We have one coming in about 4 weeks in Honduras. But beauty with this story is, in last 3 years, we funded over $500,000 USD as a non-profit for other producers that are part of this auction now. And if I go back to the story, everything happened because of that morning when they asked me, hey, do you want a cup of coffee for producers? And that story just kept getting better and better and better and better. This is why I believe it's important that we know why are we into coffee. And then when you kind of touch yourself with some of the values that you really resonate with, you will do extra things that at the beginning you kind of do it without expecting anything in return because they go with your values, but you'll be surprised how much will come back to you as well, just because it works like that. Now that's a happy part, right? The sad bit, I guess, is this. Rest of the world. So there's about 25 million smallholder farms throughout the world. And 80% of the coffee that we produce today is actually part of these really small farmers. We've just showed you an example of a very small community in Honduras in a very small mountain range. But there's so many other stories that at the moment it's actually not part of that. It's part of the sea market prices. Question, is anyone familiar with how sea market works? Not really. That's fine. I'll have some more beer and then we'll go. So let me just explain. So commodity prices, NYC. Some of you possibly read. It's a bit hot topic. Prices are really low. I think Mark Dundon had a beautiful article. If you have not read it, I really encourage you to read it. It's really nice. It just explains a little bit more what's actually been happening in the world. But let me explain how sea market works. So sea market is actually not done in a way that to produce this beer, we have a cost of the bottle, which is maybe 40 cents, or stickers and then product and packaging. So this might cost us $1, needs to be sold for $2 or $2.50, whatever it is, right? It needs to be sold for the profit. The way 90% of the coffee commodity market does not work like that. It's set by speculators. So it's demand and supply. And so if we have a really high demand and low supply, prices will be higher, and vice versa. So today our prices, I've checked yesterday, that was from yesterday, 98.15 cents USD per pound. So 90% of the coffee is actually sold for this price. Later on we're going to talk a little bit about cost and what it actually costs to produce. But let's say now that prices are really low. So the hedge funds, speculators, they're going to say prices are low. Looks like that, maybe supply, there's a lot of rains in Brazil, supply might be low, so they start buying the future. So they can, future is one container, 17 tons of coffee, and you put certain amount of money to buy a container of coffee. Doesn't matter from where, but you're just sort of buying the future share, right? So all of the speculators, they actually using this system to make money without even buying the coffee. They buy when prices are low, and then as they're buying more and more and more, prices keep going higher, and then they sell when prices are high. It's got nothing to do with what it costs to produce. It's got nothing to do with producers. Producers are not asked, hey, what does it cost you to produce your coffee? It's people that are actually not part of the coffee industry are the ones that are setting the prices for us. Sometimes it's good because, when prices are high, cool, producers can make some money, some, not much, but majority of the time it's break even or loss, majority of the time. And that kind of makes me think, well, how long are they gonna continuously keep growing coffees and keep sort of losing money on coffee? As a cafe owner, if someone tells you, next year you're gonna need to sell your coffee, your cappuccino for $2, you can't sell it for any more. You're not gonna last in that business for too long, right? And it's the same thing with the farmers. They have no choice to say, this is what they actually cost me to produce. Like, they have no right to do it. That's the sad part of it. About 10% of the coffees that we buy, it is a specialty coffee. So it's direct trade, they're higher prices, but majority of that is actually set with the NYC. So a lot of the specialty coffee that, you know, I'm not gonna say we, because I don't think I'm part of that, but a lot of people are buying, it's actually attached to the C market. So maybe we can say C market coffee is 80 points, 81 points, and then if you have a specialty coffee that's possibly 84 points, it's C market plus 50 cents or plus 60 cents. So that's what it is. And in some countries, to receive $1.60 a pound, it's actually not enough to cover the cost. Does that make sense? A little bit? Yeah? Cool, we don't need to talk too much more about it. And I guess that part about it is a lot of bigger coffee farms, they have facilities to buy the future, to lock in containers. But as I said, 80% of the farmers are very small holders. They will produce 20 to 50 bags. They don't have enough funds to actually buy one container. So it does make me think, if coffee farming is not profitable in the region and country, like what's going to happen? I think we're just going to wait till they find out that they can possibly make some more profits by planting other crops, and of course they're going to move. I would not be growing coffee and keep losing from year to year to year. Even though some of us are enjoying lower prices at the moment, and say, we can maybe have a specialty coffee for $18 or $20, thinking of the future, like what happens in 20 or 50 or 100 years, each one of us depend on what happens on the farms. There's no point they making unbelievable Lamazoko machines if there's no coffee. So I guess if one part of our chain is broken, the entire chain is not good. So having that in mind, I was ready to do another project, crazy project. So this is our first project, Santa Barbara, Honduras, Fibre Farm. So I said, well, I actually want to understand what it takes to be a commodity coffee farmer, everything. So I said, I need to buy a coffee farm. That's actually not doing good. That's part of this 90%, part of the other side. I wanted to do it with someone that I trust, someone that's actually very, has a similar values like me, and that cares about the people. So no better person than Claudia Lobo, really good friend of mine from Nicaragua. And I said, please look for the farm. And she called me and goes, Sasha, found the farm. It's perfect. I said, great. She goes, it's 1,000 meter altitude, which is obviously not very high. I said, amazing. She goes, farm is very old. It's really sick. I said, great. I'm getting excited. Catimo varietal. I said, even better. Which Catimo, if you're not familiar, we'll talk a little bit about varietals later on. I guess anyone that's looking to buy a farm, they would hang up the phone after 2 facts that she told me. But more she was telling me, I was getting more excited because it was giving me that reality. Well, this is what actually normal farm is. This is how it works. It's not a unique microclimate like we have with the Finca Betty. So I said, we're ready. We're going to do this project. So farm is about 22 hectares. It's called El Arbol, and it's in the Pilto region, very close to Honduras, and 1,000 meters, 100-year-old, being treated with the chemicals, with the nasty stuff. Production is really bad. Trees are very sick. A lot of roya or leaf rust. If some of you are not familiar with what leaf rust is, it's actually one of the most severe funguses or in Central America or throughout the world these days. About 4 or 5 years ago in Guatemala, 30% production was lost due to this issue. And for many farmers, there's a technology out there that you can beat the leaf rust and you can actually treat it. But for many farmers, they have no facilities. They don't have the money to actually do fertilizers and fumigation and everything else to actually keep it alive. So when we bought a farm, a lot of trees look like that. About 30% of our trees were in these conditions. And which means when leaf rust is very badly affected, I'm sorry for images, it's not very clear, but when leaves fall down, even though if you have some fruit, our cherries, from green, they're gonna go to brown. So there's not enough strength for them to mature to red. About 20% of the trees on our farm look like that. Some other ones we need to chop them down because they were completely gone. So we kind of had to sort of make a decision that, we need to pick these coffees either green or brown. It sounds so much easier when we say, hey, we pick red cherries, but what about if your farm cannot produce red cherries? But there was really, as a farmer, I understood a lot more where people sleep, what they eat, how does everything work? So we have about 40 people working on the farm, and in a room size of actually this space, about 5 by 5 meters, 36 people slept in a place like that. The beds, there were no mattresses, they were just wooden panels on 3 levels on one side and 3 levels on the other side. And that's typical condition in Nicaragua. No windows, no glass, no concrete, it was dirt. For breakfast, lunch and dinner, bananas or platinos, frijole, beans, and the rice. That's all they had. No seasoning. And these people were not treated as a part of civilization. They don't read, and they don't. Owners of the farms, they actually don't care if they have not been accepted by I think current civilization as well. And due to these issues, I guess when we purchased the farm, a lot of them decided to not work for us because they did not want to take instructions for female. She's a female, I'm not going to take instructions. So quite a few people left. So we thought farming is easy. We're just going to pay them more money. We're going to put mattresses for their rooms. We'll renovate their room. We'll give them a better food, and it's going to be fixed. And we'll tell them to pick red cherries. Next year we're going to have perfect coffees. But when we installed the mattresses in the house, they actually took the mattresses off and they said, we don't want to sleep here. Because what do you want from us? So we realized that we can't just be, white savior attitude and say, now we're here to change the world. We actually need to connect with these people, and we need to ask them the questions, and we need to have them to be part of these changes rather than us telling them this is the change that we would like you to make. So we changed the tactic. We said we're going to start eating together, and we start celebrating the birthdays. So for anyone's birthday, we provide a cake. We change the diet, and we actually started an education program on the farm as well, where people that actually do not know how to write, we have a teacher that comes once a week, and they teach basic writing. But those other ones that actually know how to write, we started sending them to a Nicaraguan coffee school. And so our manager, Benito, now has graduated with the administration. Another, Polo, he's in charge of the wet mill. He's actually done the course on a cupping. It's one of the schools that we have sponsored. So we've actually, throughout anyone that has actually purchased the Coffee Man book, thank you. If you haven't, this is small ad, I gotta do commercials now. If you haven't, we do have a few books for sale. And everything that we actually sell out of the book, it's 100% non-profit. And those of you that have purchased the book, I would love to thank you. And $20,000 of the sales of that book we've put towards to this Nicaraguan coffee school, where we invested in the coffee machines, equipment, so we can kind of keep pushing and keep promoting these courses for the community, which people on our farm have been utilizing a lot, and we have been providing them the education. So, so that's that's I guess the changes we made. But let me go back to talk about a little bit about coffee. So the very first year in 2016, this is the picking, color of the picking that we've done. So green cherries, red cherries, and the brown cherries. The reason we had to pick 50% of the green cherries in the first year is, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the cherries were ripening from green to brown. Secondly, people were not motivated to follow our instructions at the beginning because they just did not care. Even though if you told them we're going to pay you more, who are you to tell me to, there was no education there and there was no bond and no team. So we've decided to actually pick majority of the cherries green as opposed to brown, because when we pick them green, they're more denser. So we have a greater value. And when we sell these coffees, we could sell this for about 40 cents a pound for local market. But when we're selling a brown cherries, we get only 20 cents a pound. So here I am, a person that lives in Australia, that loves coffee so much, is picking green cherries in Nicaragua. Sorry? Local market. Local market. Yeah, local market, local consumption. So we would just sell it locally. Yeah. It does. This is not. None of these coffees get exported. They're not to that level. I have not capped it, but I think it would be 60 points, maybe. I don't know. It's sold locally. So that's in order to make some savings, a lot of cherries we were picking green. But those red cherries that we picked, we actually didn't buy any of these coffees. It was not good for us. So we sold it. I think that coffee was exported as commodity. And back then, because prices were a little bit higher, we got $1.30 USD a pound, which was not bad. Average sold price was 85 when we combined everything, but cost for production was $1.30. So of course we made a loss, but that's okay. And some of the people were asking me like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you going there, staying away from the family, picking green cherries? Like, what's the point? Like, you crazy? I think it's, if people like us are not doing it, people that have opportunity and they have values, like, for me it's okay to lose $20,000 or $30,000 on a farm, but as long as we can learn from it and we can sort of find the ways how we can build it to be better and share these ideas with the neighbors, that's why we're doing it. It's easy to give up on something and move on something that's better, but I think it's a lot better to fight for it. So changes we've also made for people after we build a really good bond, we started asking them the questions, how do we look after our farm better? You see, these indigenous people, they live on land all their life. They know land better than us. By asking them some techniques, how we can grow our farm more organically, more sustainably, they started getting excited because they started actually getting valued, that they are participating in something that's great and they're actually contributing in something that's very positive. And then we sort of this is when we sort of said, now that we have a trust and we have a great team, now we can actually show the appreciation as well. So started organizing the funds, like a small loans for them to have a certain activities that they wish, cover their medical, and as I've mentioned also education at all the levels. So if someone can write, hopefully in 5 or 10 years they have a great education. If someone cannot write, at least the next generations, they sort of, we started considering them as a part of the society rather than using them as a labor. And changes in 2018, 2 years later, were a lot better. 10% of the cherries that we picked were green, due to them being motivated, having a really healthy farm, having them to participate to actually make this farm healthy. A lot of fertilizers, we have organic fertilizers, and a lot of the techniques we've actually learned from our indigenous people, how to look after the land. And we had only 10% of the burnt cherries. I have got report from Claudia about 4 weeks ago, and this year we had only 5% of the burnt and green cherries together, and 95 were red. And And interestingly, I've actually given a sample to John Gordon. He was a finalist in WBC in 2018. And he tasted coffee from my lab bowl, and he's actually considering to use it for next competition. So very, very happy to see how the progress went. So 2016, a harvest was 6,600 pounds with the same amount of trees, same everything. In 2018, we managed to get 1,600 pounds. Healthier trees, better production, and when we pick a rye cherry, we get 3 times more density, more weight than when we pick the red cherry, than when we pick green or brown cherries as well. So only by picking red we managed to increase numbers significantly. But now that people are motivated, not only that they were picking the red cherries, we actually organized the ribbons for them to see what particular red color they're going to pick for particular varietal. So from not willing to take instructions for Claudia and not willing to pick red, now they're actually picking particular colors for different varietals, which is pretty exciting. But I guess when I talk about varietals, I look at them as us people. 50% of DNA, we actually share 50% of DNA like coffee, which is pretty cool. So, so coffee is like us. Each one of us, or each one of these kids, they have a passion for different things, and some of them, you know, love sports. Some of them want to be boxers, and I guess the worst thing we can do as a parents is, you know, I used to be Olympic handball player, and if my son really dislikes handball and I keep pushing, he's probably going to be a really bad handball player. There's no, and I'm trying to compare it because this is what we're doing with the coffee industry, with the way we are treating all of these different varietals, because. And there's a studies about 2 years ago, I think they've done World Coffee Research. They've decided to do comparison of Caturra and Catimo. Are we familiar with Caturra, Catimo? If someone is not, just everyone knows difference between Caturra and Catimo? No? Great. That's fine. So we all know Robusta and Arabica. Yes, no? Yeah, good. All right, so Arabica is, I guess, 2 species, Eugenoris and Robusta. That's the very first Arabica. Very first Arabica is a typical varietal. Think of me, tall, skinny, not very stable, so with a lot of wind I'll be blown away. So this is what typical looks like. It's very, very tall tree, no secondary branches, just one main branch, so production of typica is not very high. Like you might have a cherries here and cherries there and cherries there. Devin, do you mind coming here? So Devin is going to represent Bourbon. So after Typica, he's a lot stronger. So with a lot of wind, Devin will not be blown away. Devin produces a lot more coffee. Now he has a secondary branches. You know, you don't want to buy Typica. You want to be working with this guy, right? So the in a Timo, like it's, you know, phenomena happened that Robusta was naturally mutated with another Typica varietal, so that's Caturra. That's how we got this Catimos. Hybrid the Timo, and then blah 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 blah. We got this Catimos, right? So Catimos, by many coffee professionals, are considered this is not good. It's got Robusta roots. Coffee professionals don't like Robustas. Let's not go there. So the World Research Center decided to compare Caturra and Catimo to kind of prove what's better. And the way they've done it, they said, we're going to select 10 farms, and we're going to pick all of these coffees the same way, we're going to process the same way, we're going to dry them the same way, then we're going to compare. And to me, that quite did not sit nicely with me, because if Devin is very good in a boxing, and then and I don't like boxing, and I'm not good in boxing, he's no matter how many times they put us in a ring, Devin, he's going to beat me, right? But then if we play European handball, then I might be better than Devin. So every varietal has its own individual need, and they need to be treated differently to get best results, to let them shine, right? So this is what I mean. What they've done is they said, we're going to pick Caturra red, and we're going to pick red Catimo. They both red color, it's even, and then we're going to go next step. But then when we look at deeper and when we look at closer, if we measure amount of bricks, amount of sugars, when we pick red Caturra, it's 20%. But if we're picking Catimo with that red color, it's only 15%. So we're not comparing apple with apple. Because when we're picking the cherries with the 15% bricks, like this one, and when we taste, it might be a little bit astringent, not sweet enough, a bit nutty, and then we think, Catimos are no good, right? But then if you let this Catimo to ripen on the tree a little bit more, to get some of these more nutrients from the soil, hopefully, when it changes to this color, a little bit more deep purple, this is when we can actually pick it. That's when it's at 20%. So the advantage of this varietal, because it's robust, it's got this Robusta parent, the tree and the trunk will sort of, even though if it's windy on the farm, cherries will not fall. If we want to keep this to deep purple color, cherries will fall. So of course, producers need to pick it at 20, at this color. But Catimo, we can let it sit longer there. And that's, now we start kind of having a little bit even field. Also understanding that Catimo has a lot less mucilage and it's not as sticky, which means that we have a chance to ferment that coffee for a little bit longer before it gets over fermented. So what we started doing is we leave the Catimo overnight in enclosed environment, 20 degrees, and then we managed to build the bricks to 24%. So we can sort of take advantage of the varietal, of what it does, what the species, work with it specially to maximize the sweetness and sugars before we start fermenting it. Make sense? I'm not going to go too much technical, but I do get excited when I talk about this. So if I'm bored, just tell me. All right, so next step is fermentation, right? I think in the coffee industry, thanks God recently has changed, but in the coffee industry up until maybe 2 or 3, 4 years ago, when we were fermenting coffee, we were doing it for the reason to remove mucilage from the seed. That's that. Many great coffee experts, which I love, they're saying demucilage machine is better. You don't need to ferment coffee, that doesn't do anything. So let's just make it nice and simple. So we've sort of gone completely opposite direction and started applying and investing a lot of money in demucilage machine. So because there's no benefit fermenting. As we know, for example, when we look at the tea industry, and it's not that I love tea, but I'm actually fascinated when I was in China about a couple of years ago, and I visited one of these tea houses, and they had this pura tea, but they look like a cake. And I said, this is 500 years old. So what? And it's been fermenting. It's like that natural fermentation. I said, okay. I said, how much is this? They said, $500,000. 600 grams of pura tea. I said, wow. I said, can I try before I buy? I said, yeah, sure. I said, nah, I can't do this because I'm not going to buy it. But due to the fermentation, they managed to get so much more value out of the product. So. And that kind of made me, this and working with the winemakers and so many things. So we can actually really use the fermentation and to get best out of it. But with the idea that we look at the varietal like the individual, and then we do specific fermentation for specific varietals. I'm not going to go too much technical, but very, very simply, the way fermentation works in a coffee is we are degrading the sugars or natural sugars from the cherry. And then we start breaking them down into yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae yeast, and then the bacteria, which is Lactobacillus bacteria, and then from then onwards, as we are fermenting coffee, we're breaking down the proteins, amino acids, and then we're turning them into the alcohol acetic acid, which means when we over ferment coffee, it tastes like vinegar. I'm not sure if any of you had a chance to taste coffee. It's like really vinegar-like, or it's a bit salty, or it's very dry, very astringent. It very often happens with a lot of natural processed coffees. When you sort of have your natural processed coffees, this is really fruity, but then you go, dry, maybe like a cheap red wine. So let me show you in reality what I mean by that. So let's say this is the experiment we've done in Nicaragua. So we pulp the coffee, we place the coffee in a stainless container, and the way we normally process coffee in our world, we rely on the temperature. So today is very cold in Melbourne. Yesterday, Devin was saying the temperatures are warmer, so maybe 6, 7, 8 degrees between today and yesterday. Same thing on our farms. Temperatures will change day by day. And so what we've done is we picked the same coffees, same varietal, and then we placed one at 18 degrees, another one slept with me in the room. I put the air conditioning up, or actually heating up, so we had 26 degrees, 24 hours. Now what happened with these two coffees after 24 hours? The one that was processed at 26 degrees, you can see that pink line in the middle. That means that we have quite a bit of alcohol acidity in this fermentation. So coffee is kind of over-fermented. And when we've tasted the coffee, of course, this was clean and balanced and okay. The coffee on the left at 26 degrees was really dry, was really astringent. Hint of phenolic. Some of you that cup coffee, to me, phenolic reminds me of a bit of blood. It's not that I drink blood a lot, but sometimes blood, rusted metal, and sort of no body, no sweetness, and like really thin on a palate. So again, this is reality of any farm. It's something we cannot control. We cannot control what happens with the temperatures. And these farmers are not measuring pH. There's no, like some of you roasters that have a crop star or refractometer. There's none of that on the farms. So they do it by generations. Their dad told them to ferment for 24 hours, and that's what they do. Then we started kind of understanding what are the other issues currently that we have the way we ferment coffee. And when we're doing Kenyan style or like African coffees that are fermented in a water, how does water make an impact in fermentation? We know that water makes a huge impact in how we're brewing the coffees. Whether it's softer water, harder water, and then it's gonna give us different taste, but it actually makes a huge difference with how we're fermenting the coffee as well. So we've learned, I'll go through this really quickly. We've learned that when we are fermenting coffee with the rainwater, because rainwater is really aggressive and pH is low and water is acidic, it's actually taking a lot of nutrients and a lot of acids and proteins and everything out of the coffee. So the experiment, just to show you visually, same cherries, same amount of time in two different waters. Spring water did not change the color, and the rainwater did change the color. This year's Cup of Excellence winner, really good friend of mine from El Salvador, Raul, from Santa Rosa Farm. Actually, he is one of the few people that won Cup of Excellence 3 times. So this was his first year, but after he won his COE for the very first year, he's done his normal honey process. And then we said, Raul, I've got a great idea, a great experiment. Let's do this African style processing. You have some rainwater, you have your tank. Let's do this process. 30 bags. I'll buy it, whatever happens to it. So we made coffee from 88, 89 points, 83 points. Because we just used the rainwater and we've actually taken everything out of the coffee. It was plain, flat, and boring. And then we said, this might be coincidence. So we've done it, of course, on a smaller scale, so we don't lose as much more money and I don't get divorced. So we've done it with a really small exercise, and we came up with a really solid conclusions that rainwater is not very good for fermentation. So, thinking a little bit out of the box, some of you know a little bit about the CM process and the things we've done, but the idea with that is, let's control the fermentation. Let's put the coffee in indoor conditions so we can understand what's happening, and we can actually use now the temperature is the advantage to achieve certain flavor characters out of the coffee, which has been amazing because in Nicaragua now we have 3 rooms and every room has a different climate control temperature and different conditions. And then we can say, hey, we want more sweetness, we put it in this temperature, we want more fruit in that temperature, and etc. So it's, of course, not the only thing that we control, but it's one of the things that we can control and that we can kind of replicate day in and day out. And then we thought, enough about fancy roasters with all of these graphs and the baristas that have their refractometers. Let's put some technology on the farms as well. So we started monitoring the pH, CO2, alcohol in the fermentation, humidity, ambient temperature, fermentation time, of course bricks before fermentation and bricks after fermentation. And really using this data to understand when we taste the coffee, so we like it. So we know what numbers are. and then we can sort of keep replicating these numbers. Or if we think we push the fermentation too much, we have a vinegar taste. We can look at a pH to see how much pH has dropped from the original to where it is. It's too much, so next time we'll shorten the fermentation or maybe change the temperatures or certain scenarios. What does that mean for the farmers and back for the people? But it means that they don't need to live in places like this anymore, because now we can sell these coffees for $3, $4, $5 a pound as opposed to $1.30. We have very delicious coffees at low altitude with the common varietals, so it is possible. And we can now actually on a farm we've opened up the volunteer program, which is minimum 4 weeks, and anyone can come there, be actually guest on the farm as well. And we encourage very creative people. So one of our volunteers was a guest from America. She's an artist, so she managed to draw a logo. Sometimes we have our volunteers, the cabinet makers, and guess what? They're making a lot of tables for us. And the program we have now that our farmers are actually digitally recording all of the process, all of the systems. Every lot is very transparent, and every lot is actually, very traceable. So we have even better data that we can build better future and better coffees. And actually for people, it means that this is a group of people from our farm in Salado, and some of them are 20, 30, 40 years old, but this is the very first time they visited Caribbean, and it's only 1.5 hour away from the farm. And because of that, and because I guess of the fair prices and everything else, future for them is looking really good, as it is future for us and for our customers to enjoy better coffees. And I do want to leave you with a couple notes. I think we work in the industry that we do depend on each other, which is beautiful. Coffee connects so many people, and I guess if we work it in a way that we all part of the same chain, and we all look, if one part of the chain is looking really strong, we should sort of see what part of the chain is maybe a little bit undervalued, and put a little bit more idea, motivations, a little bit more support for that part of the chain that's a little bit more undervalued. We can leave, I guess, better future behind us for next generations. And hopefully my son, when he goes to Nicaragua farm in 30 or 40, 50 years, there'll be people that on this farm can maybe speak English, and they can make great friends, and they can actually have a lot more sustainable future. But definitely not have people that actually work on a farm to be considered as a labor, because I don't think we should not be living in that world anymore. So thank you very much for today.